Hi, this tutorial is related to data import module. It is a new provider we added to data import called HTML scraper. Basically, you could just get a list of URLs and import the HTML content into your Sitecore. After you go through the initial steps of the installation, you should be able to see on your local system module slash data import slash new folder called HTML scraper. And then under here you have some configurations that related to the provider itself, and then here when you right click on, you should see a new configuration added here, provider. Now I already created a provider configuration here separately to show you, and also after you go through the installations, there is also separate package for a sample configuration, which is the same configuration as you see here, that you could just have an idea of how this specific site was configured to import to Sitecore. Let's go through the configuration itself. So after we create a new configuration for scraping an HTML from a site, we come here and see the first section is related to HTML scraper provider itself, and the rest of the sections come from the data import module itself. Here there is this first checkbox, maintain hierarchy, is basically keeps the structure of your URLs. So if you have domain.com slash contact us slash directions, for example, and you could keep that same structure. And also note that this, as you see the comment says, this will override the foldering settings. The foldering settings here, we're referring to the main foldering settings of the data import. But if this is not checked, then it will still work the same way as it works for the data import. The ignore root directories, basically this will ignore every single, the first directory of each URL basically. Most likely it's going to be the home pages, but it could also be some other, but it's going to ignore every first directory of each URL. Import text only is just basically going to import the text only from the HTML content you're mapping. Allowed URL extensions. This is where you could specify what kind of extensions of the URLs you want to import. And this is useful for importing from sitemap XML. And there are two ways you could do the URLs. You could either provide a list of URLs, or you could just provide a sitemap XML URL. And when you do that, you might want to target only .aspx extensions, for example, that are in sitemap. And then here you could specify how many list of top 10 or top 20 URLs would import off of this list. Exclude directories. This is also comma separated values, where you, let's say if you want to import some certain URL and there is specific directory in each URL you want to exclude importing it. So if you have like domain.com slash pages slash contact us, and you do not want the pages to be imported in your Sitecore, you just want domain.com slash contact us. So that way you could just provide pages here, the directory. This will be excluded. However, just keep in mind this is a global configuration, so this is going to apply on every single URL, this logic. The base URL is simply the domain name of the URL of that site that you're trying to do the HTML scraping. Item name cleanups field. This is just as simply, you could just do some logical things on how you want to change things in the item names while they are getting created. So in here you see I created one example called remove dashes. Because the item names actually get created from the URL itself, from each directory has it becomes an item in Sitecore, and that is the name of the directory. This is where, like, if you have, like, in your directory you have spaces, or if you have dashes, you replace those dashes with spaces when you're importing, and so on. And this, for example, this remove dash is located right here. And this is a common one type of processor that is you're going to be seeing it used in many other locations, like here, remove title span, and so on. Basically, it just has a simple function of finding and replacing something from any string. In this case, I'm saying find the dash and replace it with space. Okay, going back to the continuing the configuration, and the next part is this processors section. We're gonna go deep into this more in different videos, but just the overall information on the preprocessors and post-processors. Basically, these are certain things that you run before importing any item or after importing any item. So here I have set template, for example. This is useful when you're trying to create the item based on you find a class name in your DOM, for example. If you find this class name, you're going to say created with this item, this template. This is where you could use that type of logic, that you could just change what type of template you want to use for a certain item. The DOM warnings is basically you would just have, and they all listed here. This is just a processor that checks on certain things in your DOM HTML, the entire thing, not just only the specific portion you're trying to import, and just tracks it in the reports, because at the end of the process you also get a CSV file of report, which we're gonna review it later on. And here it says list of warning tags. The warning tags are all coming from here basically. And here we have a warning tag of identifier. Basically it's all like that, identifier and action. The identifier here is you just gonna specify what kind of text you're trying to find in the HTML, and if it finds it, it just tracks it as a message for it. It just gives a report. Basically it doesn't do anything, it just gives a report. Later on, maybe the content authors do manual work for it. That's the whole purpose of this warning tags. And the same thing you can see here, iframe or embed. And these are you can set those on a configuration level, and also you have a in field mapping level, which we're gonna go through soon. And after this processor sections, you have the rest of it is basically belongs to the module itself, the data import module. And here in the query, you just specify. Now in the SQL import provider, if you're going to add, this would be your SQL query. If you've seen any of the tutorial videos of that. If you have a MySQL or SQL import data, these are the SQL queries. But here in this case, our data is coming from URLs. So we have them in the query as URL. And those are the same configurations: import to where, import to what template, pool item name. The pool item name, ideally this would be better just to keep it like this for the configuration for the HTML scraper, because in SQL import, for example, you can specify the field name of your data template, data table. But in this case, we don't have any data table. The only logical thing is just the URL, which means it's gonna pull the name from the URL. And then these are the same default configuration settings, the item max length, and so on. This is overall the just a summary of the how the configuration is set up.